Okay, why I am a climate change skeptic now, as of today, February 17th, 2022. So, in the past week, Joe Rogan has released two podcasts, one with a climate change skeptic and one with whatever the opposite of a climate change skeptic is. So, here's the deal. I don't buy it anymore. I used to. I mean, out of all of the things that I was on board with the left on, I've always considered myself more on that side than on the conservative side, pretty much from the age that I became political. And, of all of the ideas that are on the left, the one thing that I was the most on board with was tackling climate change. It was something that I believed very strongly in. I don't want to have to sit here and show I don't know how to prove that to people. I don't have video of me when I was in high school, when I was 16 years old, having arguments about this, but I was always very much, I know enough about it. I consider myself informed enough, educated enough on it to understand the problem, right? We've been burning fossil fuels, it gets in the atmosphere, greenhouse gases, right? The sun. I don't buy it anymore. I think it's real, but I don't think that it's an existential threat. I don't. I mean, things are going to change, but it is also true that things have always been changing on this planet. This Earth has been in a constant state of change over every scale you look at. You can look at a 1-year scale, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. Things change within every scope. And we've survived through all of it. And my main thing is, the past 2 years have destroyed my trust in institutions so deeply. This whole COVID thing has completely obliterated all of my trust. I don't trust any of these. It's so hard for me to trust anyone anymore, because I feel like I've been lied to so frequently by so many people that I used to trust, that were in high places in the government, I am partially a victim of the COVID crazies, or the quarantine crazies, whatever you want to call it, partially cabin fever from being in this house. But even before this, the reason I left California was because I'm losing trust in all of the institutions around me. I don't know how else to say that. And that makes me lose trust in what I've been told about climate change for years and years and years. People wield science as a political tool, and I didn't realize that until COVID happened, and I just watched what's happened with this COVID response. Our COVID response, and at all scopes. Look at the entire country, look at the planet, look at one state, look at one town, look at one bar or one restaurant. You'll find mistakes and irrational behavior at all levels. The science was not used. Wait a minute, even if it was used somewhere, it's most likely by accident. Whatever the right answer is for stopping COVID or a virus, whatever the right answer is, it's clear that the vast majority of people are not doing the right answer because there's such a variety of answers. So whatever the science says is the right answer was just not what was used. And the same thing is happening with climate change. The same thing. And climate is as nuanced and complex a subject as virology, right? Like, these are things where there is no just one answer. It's not like put on a mask and get vaccinated and then the virus is gone. You know, it's not just quarantine, virus gone, right? It's the same thing with climate change. And the thing about climate change, it's like it's another global natural phenomenon. We have viruses that are global, that are everywhere. They're so small we can't see them, and we have to study them indirectly, and we have to trust what other people tell us about them. Same thing with climate change. It's so big, none of us can see it. Nobody sees the climate. Nobody knows what a climate is, right? You can't see it. It's just a concept that is studied indirectly, and we trust people who study it, right? We trust the scientists, the science. And I remember in 7th grade watching Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. I remember agreeing with it. It was a movie. I was a 7th grader. I believed what I saw. And then I read about it and I kept learning about it. And I was like, holy fuck, this is a problem, right? This is going to increase the Earth's atmosphere temperature by 5 degrees over 100 years, and it's going to cause all sorts of blah, 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 you know? And well, I feel like I've been tricked. I feel like I was brainwashed from a young age, and it feels bad. It feels bad. I don't like it. I don't like it. And I didn't really realize it until COVID. COVID, again, has just obliterated my entire concept of the world around me. There's things that I saw in the past 2 years that have completely, just completely changed my perspective here. Completely. When I've described this in a previous video, but there was a time during the George Floyd riots where I was like, you know, we got, maybe it's because I was living in Los Angeles at the time. You know, I was seeing the direct effects of these things. I went to some of them. You know, I went to one of these George Floyd things during the day. I wasn't going to go at night and get myself into trouble one way or another, but the title of this video is going to be why I am a vaccine skeptic. Or not a vaccine skeptic. I am one of those, I guess, too. I'm only an mRNA I'm not even an mRNA vaccine skeptic. I'm just not going to get one yet. My official stance on vaccines, pro-vaccine, pro-mRNA vaccine, I just haven't gotten one yet. I just want to see what happens to everybody else first, and I don't feel like I need one because I had COVID, I'm immune from COVID. So again, my behavior is not going along with what the society expects of me, right? With what the institutions are telling me to do, which is get vaccinated. You know, I'm not doing that, and I don't think that I'm not following the science. I don't think that I'm not educated or ignorant of something. And the same thing applies to climate change now. I'm not going to vote for people who want to enact irrational policies, and I'm not going to change my behavior in some irrational way. I'm not going to My main thing is some people will not have children because of climate change. That is their stated number one reason why they will not have kids. Climate change, because of the climate. I think of all of the things, some people go vegan, which is what I did for 50 days. You know, I tested out the vegan life. And one of the biggest reasons for me doing it was because of climate change. It is clearly better for... You can lower your carbon footprint by eating a plant-based diet. That's inarguable. But, you know, some people drive less. They take public transport just for climate change, which is, you know, it's great. Yeah, it puts you in the moral high ground, but it doesn't do anything. You know, sure, maybe you're leading the way. You're setting the example for future generations. Maybe it really is having an impact. But I am not going to go along with it. Just the same way that I'm not going to go along with the vaccine thing. And I didn't used to have this position. Again, like I said, of all of the left-wing blue team things, climate change was the one they had me on for forever, right? They had me. I didn't care about racism and feminism and all this stuff. That was I'm a white guy. Sure, I'll pretend to care. I'll tweet about it. I'll do what all the other woke white guys do, which is pretend like they care. It's what a lot of people are doing, but I'm not going to, like, there's been times in my life where I did care about racism. There's been times in my life where I did care about feminism. Those times are over. Those are in the past. I feel like that was foolish of me, but I hung on to climate change. I hung on to that. I did. I was thinking this is something that needs to change. We need to shift off of carbon-based fuels. We need to lower the amount of carbon we're burning. We are putting ourselves in danger. But I no longer even believe that. I don't care anymore. And it's because of the way that I've seen our entire truth-making system, the entire system that tells me what is real, has failed me with COVID. COVID has proven to me that the entire thing is out of whack. Because COVID is a disease that, compared to climate change, right? If the Earth, whatever projection you want to say going forward, right? Climate change would be a real threat to society, a real threat to human beings. People might starve and die because of climate change, right? COVID is like a much smaller threat than climate change. It's like 0.1%. I get that back in the beginning we thought it might be like 10%, but once we figured out that it's not that big of a deal, it's just the reality, whatever is real, and then the behavior, and then the way that the system seems to think and speak to me and to people like, to everybody, right? It's just so not lined up with reality that I've now realized that it must be this way with all things. I've lost trust across the board. I don't trust them to do anything. I don't trust them to maintain the power grid, to give me clean water. I don't trust roads to be maintained. I don't trust, police forces, right? Who trusts police anymore? Everything is corrupt. Everything. All of the things. All of the things. That's kind of what it feels like. What isn't corrupt? What systems do I trust? I don't know. That's part of the reason why I'm here. I got land with a well. I'm going to set up solar panels. I'm just going to set myself up so that I need not trust anyone. That I can just, I know that I'm always going to have to get food from somewhere. I know that I'm not going to go completely off the grid here. I can't. Nobody can, truly. We all rely on the people around us. But I would prefer to rely on individuals like my neighbor down the road. I can rely on that guy. I can help my neighbors. But well, I went all over the place, didn't I? I got off track here. I'm just, climate change is for sure real. We're for sure having an impact on the climate. I don't trust a single person in any position of authority about it, or what they're going to do about it, really. Like, I don't... If a drug company is going to, if what's happened with COVID, right? These vaccines. If these companies are going to influence truth so heavily, if so much of society is going to go along with something that is not true, but it's made true by the narrative system that we have set up, right? By the distributed idea complex we have here, the media plus the government plus private companies all working together to create some sort of narrative that controls the behavior of the masses, right? If we have that going on and they're tricking people about COVID and vaccines and getting people to behave irrationally, right? Like even today, people are still wearing masks. And if that can happen with COVID, it can happen with climate change. It has already happened with climate change. There are people who will not have children because of climate change. That, again, that is irrational. That's absolutely, it's disturbing. That one disturbs me deeply, deeply. That's, what is worse? I need to make some videos about antinatalism. I think antinatalism's got to be one of the worst things that's happening to society. It's suicidal. It's like self-extinction. To not have children is to just be like, yeah, we're gonna go extinct. Okay, fuck it. You know, is there anything weaker than that? Wouldn't the proper, strong, honorable, noble, you know, the thing we would want to do would be like, we are going to tackle all the challenges of the future. I'm going to have children and they're going to be fine because I'm going to take care of the problems, you know, or I'm going to help them figure out how to take care of the problems. Like, I'm going to create a lineage from myself and help other people around me create lineages from them that can survive whatever is happening in the world now and in the future. And climate change is going to be one of those things. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. It'll work out. Any children I have will be fine. You know, I will do my best to make them fine. That's the adventure. Like, that's the call. That's the whole point of life, right? Is to continue life. That's the biological point. It's what it's what my DNA wants me to do. It's what my dick wants me to do, is go and reproduce, right? More of me, replicate me, right? Pass it on, make it survive, have children that have children that have children. So that to me is like to go against that, right? To be an anti-natalist, to say we're not going to do that anymore because the whole world the climate change is just going to end it all, right? So fuck it. Like, how is that? I'm guessing back in the Cold War people were doing the same thing but with nukes, which to me is actually reasonable. Nukes are already more dangerous than climate change. You want to change the climate on a planet, have a nuclear war. It's amazing that we haven't had one yet. You know, if there's one thing I would support, it's how about every single country, every person just can't have a nuclear bomb. That'd be a good rule. Let's just agree nobody should ever have a nuclear bomb. That's just not a thing that anybody can have an argument for. If there's any one global rule that I would support, how about that? You know, and that's why with climate change, you're going to have similar rules. Like, isn't that, here's an interesting thought, right? If you're going to support a rule for nuclear bombs, if you're going to say no nukes, because that gives one individual too much power over destroying the whole planet, you can make the same argument about climate change. No burning large quantities of gas, right? Because it ruins things for everybody else. I would say an important difference here, though, is that burning gas actually generates power for people. Blowing up nuclear bombs is purely destructive. And if you want to take that a step further, if you want to make an ethical argument for the existence of nuclear bombs, then you're kind of entering this sort of might is right kind of situation where maybe it's good that we have war because it, you know, I don't want to go down that line of thoughts, but there's no way, you know, back to what I was talking about, the sense-making, truth-making, the way that our system, our government, and our private institutions and our media together, the way that it behaves and speaks seems to be fundamentally disconnected from reality. That's what I've realized with COVID, and that's what I've now realized with climate change, is that the same thing is going to happen with climate change. So that makes me, it's not that I'm a skeptic of it, it's that I'm a skeptic of the solutions. I'm a skeptic of the behavior in response to it. And I'm also skeptical about some of the science, because I think that there's just too much of a political incentive for one narrative to be pushed. If you're a scientist and you say, oh, look at me, I've discovered that the Earth is actually in more danger than previously thought, people are going to retweet you so quickly. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of a joke, kind of a simplification of what I'm trying to say here, is that people that are pushing a narrative that allows for political gains to happen are going to be supported by the political system. The truth will be bent in order to gain power. And that's the same stance that people make about white supremacy and patriarchy, is that these systems that are set up that influence truth in order to maintain power or gain power. And that's why I think those things are conspiracy theories. And that's why people on the right always sound like conspiracy theorists. Like, at some point, we need to have a mature conversation about conspiracy theories and what that means. because clearly people and organizations and institutions conspire to do things, and if you have a model of understanding that, that's a theory, and so, around in circles we spin. So, around in circles we go. There's no way. I'm just, there's such thing as the comfortable position. And again, this might be because I'm coming from California. All my friends were my age and they were living in a city, and they were, most of my friends were educated, left-leaning people that grew up in a relatively wealthy household, that could afford to get these people to college and then into tech jobs or whatever, right? Like there's a group of people. My sample is biased, right? I've definitely spent more time around left-leaning educated people than the average population, right? So I think that I'm more sensitive to these things, or that's the part of the elephant that I can see and touch, right? So I think that in my experience, the comfortable position is the one that is more antinatalist. The comfortable position is the one that goes along with certain categories of narratives, right? The COVID narrative, the climate change narrative, the anti-racism narrative, the pro-gay narrative, right? Like these are narratives where if you're in a room of people that are even slightly to the left, the easiest position to take, the one where nobody will give a single fuck about, like the path of least resistance, is the one that goes along with these ideas. And political gains can be made in a single room, right? If you're looking at one room and there's 10 people in it, I can boost my own reputation with these people by being like, I believe that gay people should get married. Something like that, right? You just go along with some of the things that people believe, right? You go, yeah. Colin Kaepernick is, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to get into details about things. But there's like the comfortable position, and people just take it. Some people just take it because it's easy. Some people take it to gain power. And then some people are fucking annoying about it. And they all right, what am I at? 22 minutes? I'm about to go way deeper into this. We're talking about feminism now. I think that Jordan Peterson has been making an interesting point recently, and this is something that he hasn't gotten in trouble with yet. It's funny, people call him misogynistic. They were calling him that back in 2017, 2016, 18-ish, I don't know. But they were saying that he's been accused of a lot of things related to anti-feminism, misogyny, whatever, sexism, right? But they haven't been really addressing the real anti-woman position that he's been taking. Recently, he's been sort of, I think if you're somebody who listens to him heavily, such as myself, big JP fan, in case you haven't figured that out yet. But he has been sort of poking his foot out tentatively into a real argument about what happens to a social institution when you introduce females into it. What happens when we go from a male, certain institutions were primarily male for as we know, right? This is what the feminists talk about all the time. And suddenly, starting in the beginning of feminism, which somewhere between 1850 and 1920, I don't know where you want to draw that line, there was introduction of females into social institutions. And females have different behavior than males, because there are differences between men and women, right? And so, I've talked about this in previous videos, but if you have a room of people and one of them is injured or hurt in some way, who's more likely to step forward and provide assistance to these people, right? Like if somebody falls and hurts themselves, who's going to step forward and be like, oh my God, we need to help this person? I'm going to say it's like 60-40 female to male, right? Like you can run the simulation 1,000 times, and I predict 600 times at least out of the 1,000, the person who steps forward first to provide aid to the injured person will be female than male, right? 6 out of 10, I think, is perfectly reasonable, if not more, right? It might be 7 or 8 out of 10. I don't know. But it's definitely more than 5. And the point is that this stepping forward to help, that's compassion. That's compassion. The problem is we can't read the minds of the person who steps forward. And so we don't know if they're truly compassionate. Are they motivated by their own... I mean, what is compassion, right? What does that mean? Are you looking at this injured person? Are you feeling something and then acting on your feelings? Or do you see an injured person and do you think everybody in this room will think I'm a good person if I step forward right now? And how can the person even tell the difference? Like, the person genuinely, how do they know that they're doing one or the other? If you ask them in that moment, what would they say? And are they telling the truth, even to themselves, right? I'm not saying that they're gonna lie, that everybody's like freaking Jafar from Aladdin, right? I'm not saying that everybody's like this crazy psychopath, sociopathic person that's doing behavior to gain power. But I think it's a combination of these two things. I think that we display compassion in order to gain political, social status. When I go help somebody who's injured, other people are going to look at me and be like, wow, that guy's a cool guy. He's helping that injured person, right? And that's good for me. It's, it's good for me. So there's an incentive for me to do this. And I think females, women are just slightly more likely to be this way because of the way we're built. We are biologically different. Call me transphobic. That's how it is. But when we have this introduced into a social system, which we did back in 1919 when we gave women the right to vote, it might be possible that this strategy of false compassion, fake compassion, is actually more powerful now because there's more women in the system. And that's why we might see the rise of things. And this is, this is not, I'm not saying, I'm just going to say it. The rise of things like anti-racism, LGBT rights, protecting people for COVID, stopping climate change. A lot of this might be because of the introduction of women into politics. Not all of it. I'm not doing, this is not a single factor thing, but it makes a difference that we have women in politics now. And if you think that's not true, then I have to ask you the question. Did introducing the women's right to vote make no difference? Has society not changed at all since 1919? It seems to me that as women get more and more power, whatever you want to call it, if they ever didn't have power, that's where you get into this argument about power. I would argue that women always had power, really. But that, again, this is so hard to stay on track with this kind of stuff because you have to go down every single pathway. So many different argumentative pathways that open up when you talk about these things. And there's so many assumptions people make right off the bat because we've had this ideology that's been kind of leaking into society for the longest time that there has been this power differential between different identity groups and things like that. And it seems like the identity politics, the identity groups, this narrative that there are power differentials is really powered by false compassion, right? If you say, vote for me because I'll help black people, vote for me because I'll help women, because I'll help gay people, because I'll help trans, vote for me because I'll help protect your grandmother from COVID, vote for me because I'll help save the climate, I'll do all these things. This is what gets me about the left-leaning narratives. This is what gets me about the blue team, is it's been taken over by false compassion powered narratives. That's what it is. If it was people who were looking at the world scientifically, rationally, mechanically, and being like, the world actually works like this, we are actually seeing problems here, we're gonna fix that, right? If I could trust that the people in the room were legitimately looking at the injured person, which is, in this metaphor, is kind of like the problem, right? There's always a problem in the world, in society. If I could trust that they were looking at that thing and they were identifying, like, okay, they're telling the truth about it, right? They're like, this person might have a broken ankle, we should apply medical attention right now, we should get them to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Here's the steps we should take, here's why. If I could trust that these people were looking at the situation and telling me the truth about it, I'd be on board, obviously. I'd be on board. But I do not trust them anymore. I think that, wow. What a rant. I should stop. Almost 30 minutes. I should stop. I've spent all day in a crawl space. Not all day, but some of the day. That's why, well, I guess you can't see any. My back is covered with dirt, but you can't see that. Yeah, I just, I don't know what is real anymore. You know? I don't know who to trust about anything. I don't know if I'm living completely in 1984 land, right? Where, like, there's just, you know, the country made 180,000 boots today. And that's exactly how many they made. And then in reality, they made like 10, right? Like, that is kind of, like, who is telling the truth? And how do I know? So, and that's kind of the biggest question ever. And maybe, you know, there has been evidence that your tendency to lean left or right has something to do with your how much you trust things like inherently. It's not good to be completely untrustworthy. I don't want to go completely out of my mind. You know, some people go all the way into the woods, really, metaphorically and literally. They kind of pull all the way out of society, and you can't do that. I still want to be part of society, and I still want to engage and help and solve problems. I would love to solve problems that exist in this world today. Healthcare is a big problem. Climate change is actually a real thing. I just want it to be solved by people who are telling me the truth about things. You know, when I hire a plumber to come in, when I hire somebody to come in and fix part of my house, I say, look at this, look with your eyes. I'll talk to you about it, but go look at it. Tell me the truth about what you see as the problem. Do you see the same problem that I see? Okay, we see the same problem. How are you going to solve it? Okay, how much is this going to cost? How many people are you going to need? Tell me the truth. Do the thing. I'll give you money, and we both win. I get my problem solved, you get money. It's the same thing with politics, right? If people are telling me the truth, I'm fine with it. I just don't trust any of them. That's why I like things like UBI. You can't mess up UBI as much as you can mess up a climate change solution, right? Like, which one is harder to solve? Giving every single person a check or fixing the atmosphere, right? The government's so good at handing out checks. So it should be easy to get that at least close to good, you know? Our healthcare system seems pretty fucked up. If it costs $400 a month minimum to get healthcare, something like that, you know, all right. I'm done. Today's February 17th, 2022. See you later.